When billionaire Arthur Frederick checked the security footage of his dying Quadruplets rooms, he expected to find nothing. What he saw the maid doing at 2 a.m. left him speechless and would destroy everything he thought he knew about the medical system. For boys, for years old, for separate rooms, experts from Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, and Switzerland had all failed. The children were nonverbal, wasting away from a condition with no name and no cure. Arthur had spent $14 million searching for answers. Then a housekeeper making $16 an hour did what none of them could. But when Arthur discovered what she'd been doing in secret, the unauthorized interventions, the forbidden contact, the things she whispered over his sons every single night, his first instinct wasn't gratitude. It was to call the police. What happened next exposed a conspiracy so dark it would make national headlines and send 3 doctors to prison. This is that story. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I believe this story found you today for a reason. The Frederick estate sat on 12 acres in Greenwich, Connecticut, 40,000 square feet of Georgian architecture, marble from Italy, crystal chandeliers in every hall, the kind of wealth that made magazines beg for photo shoots. But inside, silence. Arthur Frederick had built an empire. Frederick Pharmaceuticals, a net worth Forbes estimated at $2.4 billion. His name was on buildings at Yale and Princeton. None of it mattered, because upstairs, in 4 separate rooms, his sons were dying. Donald, Charles, Joseph, John, for years old. Quadruplets born on a January morning that had stolen everything. Their mother, Catherine, hemorrhaged during delivery. Arthur watched her slip away while his sons drew their first breaths in the room next door. The boys never knew her voice, never felt her arms. Now, they were dying too. The condition had no name. Autoimmune disorder, the specialist said. Rare, possibly untreatable. The boys were nonverbal. Didn't walk, barely ate. Their small bodies grew thinner each month despite the feeding tubes, the experimental protocols that cost $40,000 per child per week. Dr. Julian Cross from Johns Hopkins had designed their care plan. Isolation protocols, each boy in his own medical suite. Separate staffs, separate equipment. We can't risk cross-contamination, Dr. Cross had explained. If one develops an infection, we could lose all 4. So they lived apart. 4 sons who'd shared a womb, now separated by walls. Arthur's nightly routine never changed. 10 p.m., he'd climb the marble staircase to the 2nd floor. The hallway stretched 40 feet, bare except for 4 mounted monitors. For screens showing 4 white rooms. 4 small beds with 4 small bodies lying motionless under medical blankets. He'd stand there in his tailored suit and watch his sons sleep. Donald in the east wing, Charles in the west, Joseph and John between them. Heart rate monitors beeped. For drips caught the light. Ventilation systems hummed. Sometimes Donald would cry in his sleep. Silent tears traced his hollow cheeks, soaking into the pillow that staff changed every 4 hours. Arthur would watch on the screen, his hand hovering over the intercom, wanting to comfort, to do something. But Dr. Cross had been clear. Minimal vocal stimulation. Their systems are too fragile. So Arthur just watched, night after night. A father with every resource, powerless. He'd spent $14 million in 4 years. Consultations with every expert. Experimental treatments from Switzerland. Genetic sequencing. Clinical trials that required 50-page waivers. None of it worked. $14 million. It might as well have been 14 cents. Arthur touched the screen showing Donald's monitor. His eldest by 3 minutes. The boy's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Medical staff would arrive at midnight for vitals. They'd check his stats, adjust his 4, leave without waking him. The same routine every night for 4 years. Arthur's reflection stared back in the darkened screen. 52 years old, gray at his temples, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when Catherine was alive. He looked like a man who'd built everything and lost what mattered. He stood there for 20 minutes, watching. Then he walked back down the marble staircase to his study. Poured scotch he wouldn't drink. Sat at the desk where he'd signed the contracts that made his fortune. The house settled into its nightly silence. 40,000 square feet, 12 acres. For dying boys. Tomorrow would be exactly the same. He'd spent $14 million. None of it mattered. Then she arrived. And Simpson arrived on a Tuesday night with everything she owned fitting in 2 bags. 43 years old. Hands that had scrubbed floors in office buildings, hotel rooms, and hospital corridors for 26 years. She wore her church shoes because they were the only pair without holes. $16 an hour. Night shift. It was the only position available when she'd called the Frederick Estates staffing agency, desperate, on her last $3 of cell phone credit. She needed this job like air. Mama Ruth, her grandmother, was 71 and diabetic. The nursing facility cost $2,800 a month and was 4 months behind. $3,400 overdue. 2 more weeks or Mama Ruth would be discharged and had nowhere to bring her. Her apartment was a 5th-floor walk-up, no elevator. Mama Ruth couldn't manage stairs anymore. This job was her last chance. 16 other applications had gone unanswered. She'd been let go from her previous position after someone complained she prayed in the break room. So here she was. Mrs. Dalton, the head housekeeper, gave her the tour in clipped sentences. East Wing by 1 a.m., West Wing by 3. Don't touch anything medical. Don't enter the children's suites. Don't speak to Mr. Frederick if you see him. And nodded. Tried to memorize the maze of hallways in this house that was larger than her entire apartment building. She started at 11:30. Marble floors that showed every streak. Baseboards that probably cost more than her rent. She worked quietly, invisible, efficient, grateful. At 12:15, she reached the second-floor hallway. For monitors mounted on the wall, and paused, dusting cloth in hand. She'd been told about Mr. Frederick's sons. Very sick children. The other housekeepers whispered about it. Quadruplets who never left their rooms. Specialists from Europe. Experimental treatments. But nobody mentioned they were kept in separate rooms. And stepped closer. For little boys. For white rooms. For beds with 4 small bodies barely visible under blankets. One of them was crying, and watched silent tears fall as she dusted the screen's edge. The child in the East Wing. Donald, according to the nameplate. He was awake, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down his hollow cheeks. No one came. The monitors showed empty rooms. Just the boys and the machines. They're not just sick, and whispered. They're lonely. She'd seen that look before. Silent. Hopeless. The crying of someone who'd learned no one comes when you call. Her chest tightened. Marcus had cried like that. 12 years hadn't dulled it. Her son, 6 years old, admitted with meningitis. She'd had to leave him to work her hotel shift. Had to. They were 3 days from eviction. She'd promised him she'd be back in 6 hours. He died in 4. Alone in a hospital room with machines beeping and nurses too busy to hold his hand. His last word was Mommy. Marcus had called for her, and she wasn't there. Ann's hand trembled against the monitor. On the screen, Donald turned his head slightly, as if looking toward the door, hoping. Then his eyes closed, and the tears kept falling. Lord, she whispered, I see them. Please, don't let me ignore what you're showing me. She finished dusting, moved down the hall, but when she reached John's door, she stopped. Her hand went to the handle, rested there. Inside, a 4-year-old boy was sleeping, or maybe awake, maybe crying like his brother, maybe wondering if anyone saw him. Mrs. Dalton's voice echoed. Don't enter the children's suites. She had rules to follow, a job she couldn't lose. Mama Ruth was counting on her and pulled her hand away. Stepped back, kept walking. But as she moved down the corridor, pushing her cart over marble that gleamed like ice, she couldn't shake the feeling. She'd walked away from Marcus once because she had to. She wasn't sure she could do it again. She wasn't supposed to go in those rooms. But what she saw next made it impossible to stay away. It took 2 weeks to break the rules. 2 weeks of watching those monitors. 2 weeks of dusting around them while the boys lay alone. 2 weeks of going home, unable to shake the image of 4 children crying. On the 14th night, at 2 a.m., she made a decision. The medical staff rotated shifts at 2:15. For 15 minutes, the second floor was empty, and had timed it. Watched the pattern. She pushed her cart to Donald's door, put her hand on the handle. This time, she didn't pull away. Donald was awake. He turned his head toward her, eyes wide. For years old and small for his age. And 4 line ran to his arm. The room smelled like disinfectant. And stepped inside. "Hi, baby," she whispered. Donald stared. Didn't move. Didn't make a sound. And pulled a small book from her pocket. Her Bible. Pages worn soft from 30 years of reading. She sat beside his bed. "I'm going to read you something." She opened to Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures." Her voice was barely a whisper, but in that silent room, it filled the space. Donald's eyes focused on her for the first time. Really focused. And read the whole psalm. Then she reached out and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. The next night, she went back. And the night after that, by week's end, she visited all 4 boys. Donald, Charles, Joseph, John. 15 minutes each. Bible stories. Hymns sung softly. And always she held their hands. Charles cried silent tears during the story about David and Goliath. But he was listening. She could tell by the way his fingers tightened when David picked up the stone. In the second week, and brought paper. Plain white printer paper from the supply closet. She showed Charles how to fold it. Crease by crease. The way Marcus used to do it. Paper birds. Marcus had loved origami. Had filled Anne's apartment with paper cranes and flowers. After he died, she'd found a shoebox under his bed. 47 paper birds he'd saved. She taught Charles first. His hands were clumsy, but he watched her fingers and tried. It took 3 nights before he got one to hold its shape. When he did, his face lit up. She taught the others too. Donald, Joseph, John. Within days, they started leaving birds on their pillows. One each night, waiting for her. For paper birds on her cleaning cart became her treasure. Then came the sunroom. South side of the mansion, past the library. Windows floor to ceiling. She cleaned it every night and never seen anyone use it. On her 21st night, and made another decision. At 3 a.m., she went to Donald's room, wrapped him in his blanket, carried him down the hall. Then Charles, Joseph, John, for brothers who hadn't been in the same room since birth. They stared at each other. Donald reached out and touched Charles's hand. Joseph leaned against John. No words, but they had each other, and sat with them. Read the prodigal son, saying, "Jesus loves me." When she carried them back, John held her neck tighter. Didn't want to let go. She tucked him in, smoothed his hair. "I'll come back tomorrow. I promise." He closed his eyes. One tear slipped down his cheek. But this time, she thought it might not be from sadness, and gathered her cart. For paper birds sat in the corner she'd made for them. Fragile things folded by hands that weren't supposed to know how to create. She smiled. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Mrs. Dalton stood in the hallway, arms crossed, face carved from stone. "What," she said slowly, "do you think you're doing?" But someone was watching, and what they saw made them furious. Anne's heart stopped. Mrs. Dalton's eyes swept from and to the cleaning cart with its 4 paper birds, then back to Anne's face. "I asked you a question. I was just. You were just breaking every protocol in this house." Mrs. Dalton stepped closer. "Those children are quarantined. Isolation protocols. Doctor's orders. They're lonely," and said quietly, "They're dying." Mrs. Dalton's voice was sharp. "Their father has spent millions on the best medical care in the world. Dr. Cross is from Johns Hopkins. His protocols are not suggestions. They are requirements." Anne's hands trembled. "Those boys are kept separate to protect them. From infection, from contamination, from people who think they know better than trained specialists." Mrs. Dalton crossed her arms. "Mr. Frederick's orders are absolute. Dr. Cross's protocols are not to be questioned. Touch those children again, and you're fired. Am I clear?" The word hit like a fist. Fired. And thought of Mama Ruth. The nursing facility. $3,400 overdue. "Mrs. Dalton, please. I need this job." "Then do your job. Only your job." "But they're suffering. They're suffering from a condition no one can cure." "I understand you mean well. But you're a housekeeper, not a doctor, not their mother." Mrs. Dalton's face remained hard. "The doctors know what they're doing. You don't. I understand they're alone. They're alone because that's what keeps them alive." Mrs. Dalton stepped back. "This is your only warning. Stay away from those boys. Clean the halls. Dust the monitors. Go home. If I catch you in their rooms again, you'll be escorted off the property. Do you understand?" Anne's throat tightened. She looked at the 4 paper birds on her cart. "Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Finish the west wing and go home." Mrs. Dalton paused. "I'm not reporting this to Mr. Frederick. Consider that a mercy. But there won't be a second one." Then she was gone and stood alone. The monitors glowed on the wall. For screens. For boys. All 4 with silent tears in separate rooms. Donald lay facing the wall. Charles stared at the ceiling. Joseph's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. John had his eyes closed, face tight, like he was trying not to cry, and pressed her palm against the monitor showing John's room. She could walk away, follow the rules, keep her job, pay Mama Ruth's bills, or she could go back, love them, risk everything. The impossible choice sat on her chest like a stone. Mrs. Dalton's words echoed. "The doctors know what they're doing. You don't." But Anne knew something too. She knew what it looked like when a child died alone. She knew the weight of a promise broken because you were too afraid. She'd failed Marcus. Could she fail for more? And gathered her cart. The paper birds shifted as the wheels turned. She finished her shift at 7. Drove home in silence, climbed 5 flights to her apartment. She sat on her bed and stared at the photograph on her nightstand. Marcus, 6 years old, smiling, a paper crane in his hand, and closed her eyes. That night, when the sun set and fear rose like a flood and got on her knees, and what she prayed changed everything, and knelt beside her bed at midnight. The apartment was dark except for streetlight through thin curtains. Her knees pressed into worn carpet, hands clasped so tight her fingers went numb. "Lord, I can't do this." Her voice cracked. "I'll lose my job. Mama Ruth will lose her facility. I have $3,400 overdue and 2 weeks left. If I get fired, I lose everything." Anne's own silent tears as she prayed fell onto her hands. But those boys, I see Marcus in their eyes. The memory came sharp, unforgiving. 12 years ago, the hospital called at 3 a.m. "You need to come now." She'd driven through red lights, run through corridors in her hotel, uniform still smelling of bleach. Room 304. She pushed through the door. The silence told her everything. Marcus was already gone, 6 years old, small under the white sheet. His hand still warm when she took it, but the warmth was fading. What were his last words? and had asked. The nurse hesitated. "Mama." One word. He'd called for her, and she wasn't there, and made a promise that day. Holding Marcus's cooling hand, she whispered it like a vow. "Never again will I let a child suffer alone." Now, 12 years later, kneeling in her apartment, and faced the choice again. If you're asking this of me, make me willing, because I'm not. I'm scared. She stayed on her knees until they went numb. Then she stood and made a phone call. "Mama Ruth, I need to ask you something." "Baby, what's wrong?" "You remember when Marcus wasn't growing right? Failing to thrive?" The clinic said. "What did you give him?" Mama Ruth was quiet. Then, fermented cod liver oil, vitamin D drops, sunlight every day, and love, baby. That's all most children need. Good nutrition, sunshine, and someone who sees them. And closed her eyes. "Thank you. And what's this about?" "I'll tell you soon. I love you." The next day, and spent her last $40 at a health food store. Cod liver oil, vitamin D drops. She hid them in her cleaning cart under the rags. That night at 2 a.m., she went back. Donald first. 3 drops of vitamin D on his tongue. He blinked, confused but trusting. Then cod liver oil mixed with honey. Then Charles, Joseph, John. She read to them, held their hands, sang softly. "I'm going to help you," she whispered to John. "I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to try." Every night for 3 weeks she came, gave them supplements, brought them to the sunroom when she could, prayed over them with desperation. She touched Marcus's photograph every night before her shift. A reminder, a promise. Week 1, nothing. Week 2, Donald seemed slightly more alert. Maybe. Week 3, Charles reached for her hand before she sat down. Small things. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. And kept going. Kept praying. Kept loving them while fear gnawed constantly. Mrs. Dalton watched her closely now and felt eyes everywhere. But she couldn't stop. For 3 weeks, she waited, prayed, loved them in secret. Then one morning, everything fell apart. Stop right here. I know you're on the edge of your seat. I know you need to know what happens. But thousands of people watch these stories and never subscribed. And that means they miss the ones that could change their lives. If Anne's story is touching you, if her faith is convicting you, if you're feeling anything right now, prove it. Hit subscribe, like this video, comment where you're watching from, and tell me. Have you ever risked everything for what you believed was right? Because what happens in the next 3 minutes will either break your heart or restore your faith in miracles. Don't miss it. Week 5 brought changes and almost didn't believe. Donald sat up without help. Charles made eye contact and held it. Joseph's color improved from gray to pale pink. John smiled when she entered his room. Small miracles. Or maybe just hope dressed up as progress. On Thursday morning, they made a decision. The garden behind the mansion had been calling to her for weeks. Sunlight, fresh air, the things Mama Ruth said children needed. At 3 a.m., when a medical staff was between rounds and carried the boys outside, the garden was silent except for crickets. Moon hung low and full, and set them on the grass together, all 4 touching for the first time in weeks. They stared at the sky, at each other, at the world beyond white walls. Joseph's silent tears, as always, slipped down his cheeks. But he was outside. He was with his brothers, and knelt beside them. Opened her Bible, started reading Psalm 91. Then John collapsed. His small body seized. Eyes rolled back. Breath stopped. No, 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 no. And grabbed him, pulled him into her lap. "John, baby, stay with me." He didn't respond. His lips were turning blue. His mind raced. The medical team was off-site. Thursday meetings. They wouldn't be back for 20 minutes. The main house was too far. Her phone was in her cart. She was alone. "Lord, I don't know what I'm doing, but you do." Her voice shook as she held him. "Guide my hands. Please, guide my hands." She tilted his head back. checked his airway, and saw it. His tongue, blocking the passage. Something so simple, so obvious. Something the monitors would never catch. Anne's fingers moved on instinct. She cleared the airway, positioned him, started compressions she'd learned in a CPR class 10 years ago. Come on, baby. Come on. Nothing. She bent close. Breathed for him. Once. Twice. Then she held him against her chest and sang. Voice breaking. Tears falling. His eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. John's chest moved. A breath. Small. Shaky. His eyes opened. And sobbed. Thank you. Oh, thank you. John's lips moved. A sound came out. Rough. And used. But a sound. Ma. And froze. Mama. The first word spoken in 4 years. Mama. Anne's whole body shook. She held him tighter. Yes. Yes, baby. I'm here. Behind her, she heard it. Another voice. Mama Anne. She turned. Donald was standing. Actually standing. Staring at her with wide eyes. Mama Anne. His voice was thin, like wind through reeds, but it was there. Then Charles. Mama Anne. Then Joseph. Mama Anne. 4 voices. For boys who've been silent their entire lives. They ran to her. Stumbled, clumsy, weak, but they ran. Wrapped their arms around her. Buried their faces in her uniform. Mama and Mama Anne, not silent anymore. John laughed through his tears. Donald clung to her neck. Charles pressed his face against her shoulder. Joseph held her hand like he'd never let go. Inside the house, alarms started blaring. Medical monitors detecting the changes. Heart rates normalizing. Inflammation dropping. Systems coming alive. And held all 4 boys and wept. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. They stayed like that. 5 people in a garden under the moon. A family born not from blood, but from love given when no one was watching. And didn't hear the car pull up. Didn't hear the footsteps running across the lawn. Didn't know Arthur Frederick was 17 minutes away when he got the call. What he walked into would change everything. But not the way you think. Arthur Frederick's car screeched to a halt on the gravel drive. He'd been at a late dinner when the alarms came through on his phone. All 4 monitors. Simultaneous alerts. He ran across the lawn toward the garden. What he saw stopped him cold. His sons, all 4, outside, wrapped around a woman in a housekeeper's uniform. And they were speaking. Mama and for years of silence. Shattered. Another car pulled up. Dr. Cross emerged, medical bag in hand, face tight. Mr. Frederick, what's... He stopped. Stared. Then his expression darkened. Get away from them. Now. And looked up. Her face went pale. Dr. Cross strode forward. You. What have you given them? Nothing harmful. Just. She's administered something unauthorized. Dr. Cross turned to Arthur. This could be temporary stimulant response. Adrenaline spike before total collapse. We need hospitalization immediately. Arthur's mind spun. His sons were talking, moving. But Dr. Cross looked terrified. What have you done? Arthur's voice came out cold. And stood slowly, boys clinging to her. Mr. Frederick, please. You're not a doctor. Arthur stepped forward. You had no right. Do you understand what you've risked? I was trying to help. Help. Arthur's hand shook. You've broken every protocol. Given them unauthorized substances. He pulled out his phone. Security, South Garden. Now. Daddy, no. Donald's voice cut through the night. Don't hurt Mama Anne. The word daddy nearly broke Arthur. But Dr. Cross was separating the boys, checking pulses, face grave. Whatever she's done, we don't know the consequences. This could be neurological damage presenting as improvement. We need immediate evaluation. Arthur looked at his sons, speaking, alive in ways they hadn't been. But what if it was temporary? What if this woman had destroyed their last chance? Remove her. Two security guards appeared and didn't resist. "Mr. Frederick, please. Just look at them. I'm calling the police. Child endangerment. Unauthorized medical treatment." The boy screamed, "Mama Ann! Don't take Mama Ann!" They tried to reach her, but Dr. Cross held them back. "It's okay. We're going to take care of you," and didn't fight the handcuffs. Just looked at Arthur, tears streaming. "I just love them, Mr. Frederick. That's all." Security led her away. The boy screamed as Dr. Cross loaded them in his car. Presbyterian Hospital. Full panels. "I need to see what she's done." Arthur stood alone in the garden as the cars pulled away. His son's voices he'd prayed to hear, echoing. He walked back inside, poured scotch he didn't drink, sat in his study, surrounded by silence that felt heavier now. At 4 a.m., unable to sleep, he went to his office, pulled up the medical files he'd been sent monthly for 4 years. Reports he'd signed, trusted. He'd never read them thoroughly. Dr. Cross was the expert. But tonight, something made him look closer. Page 47. A lab report. 3 years old. He read it once. Then again. His hand started shaking, and spent that night in a holding cell. Arthur spent it reviewing something he should have looked at years ago, and what he found in those files would destroy him. The lab report was dated 3 years ago, January 14th. Arthur's eyes scanned the page. Vitamin D deficiency. Severe recommendation. Immediate supplementation. Expected resolution, 6 to 8 weeks. His hands shook. 3 years ago, they'd known. The answer had been simple. Curable. He scrolled down. Dr. Cross's handwriting filled the margin. Nutritional intervention would resolve symptoms within 6 to 8 weeks. Recommend. No disclosure to patient family. Continue protocol, H7. Projected revenue, $8.3 million annually. Arthur read it again. No disclosure. The room tilted. Next file. An email chain. Dr. Cross and someone at Helix Pharmaceutical. "Julian, we need the Frederick case continuing through Q4. If this resolves with simple supplementation, we lose credibility and contracts. Keep him on H7. Another email. 6 months later, outsourced second opinion came back recommending nutritional intervention. Filed as inconclusive. Frederick trusts me. We're fine. Arthur stood so fast his chair crashed backward. They knew. For 3 years, they watched his son suffer. Kept him sick. For money. His phone was in his hand. 5 a.m. He didn't care. I need you at Presbyterian Hospital. Now, bring recording equipment. 20 minutes later, Arthur walked into the private wing. Dr. Cross looked up. Arthur, you shouldn't be. When did you know about the vitamin D deficiency? Dr. Cross's face went blank. I'm not sure what. Arthur held up his phone. The lab report displayed. 3 years ago. You knew. Color drained from Dr. Cross's face. You wrote no disclosure. You suppressed the second opinion. You kept them sick for revenue. Arthur, the complexity. You let my son suffer so you could bill me $8 million. Arthur's lawyer stepped forward, recording. Dr. Cross, did you identify a nutritional deficiency 3 years ago? Yes or no? Silence. Dr. Cross, the research required. You knew. Arthur's voice shook. You knew it was simple, and you hid it. Dr. Cross's facade cracked. The pressure, the funding, the board. I made a decision. You made 4 children suffer for money. Arthur's lawyer was already dialing. Federal authorities. Medical board. By sunrise, the files were released. The headlines wrote themselves. Doctor suppressed cure for profit. Billionaire's sons kept sick for revenue. 3 arrested in medical fraud. Dr. Cross. Dr. Vance. A 3rd colleague. All in custody by 7 a.m. Arthur drove to the police station. Demanded to see Aunt Simpson. When they brought her out in handcuffs, he fell to his knees. I'm sorry. "I'm so sorry," and stared at him. "You were right. They were lonely, dying because I trusted the wrong people. And you loved them when I couldn't. Mr. Frederick." All charges dropped. "Now," he turned to the officer, "she saved my sons. I had her arrested." The handcuffs came off and rubbed her wrists. Arthur stood. "I don't expect forgiveness. But please, come back. The boys won't stop asking for you." And looked at him for a long moment. "They need you," Arthur whispered. What Arthur did next shocked everyone who knew him. The press conference happened at noon. Arthur Frederick stood in front of cameras from every major network. His tie was crooked. He hadn't slept. A housekeeper making $16 an hour saw what doctors making $16,000 an hour refused to see. "She loved my sons. They used them." The room erupted. Arthur held up his hand. "And Simpson saved my children. I had her arrested. I trusted credentials over compassion. I was wrong." He looked at the camera. "All charges dropped. And to the 3 doctors in custody, I will spend every resource making sure you never practice again." And watch from a hospital waiting room. The boys were being evaluated by new doctors. Arthur appeared in the doorway. "They're asking for you." For boys looked up from their beds. Faces lit like sunrise. Mama Ann. She was across the room in seconds. They wrapped around her. Arthur stood back, throat tight. Over the next week, Arthur made arrangements. He offered a head of household, $150,000 a year. She declined. "Let me be their nanny. That's all I want. And you deserve more." "I don't want more. I want them." Arthur was quiet, then nodded. "One condition." He handed her legal papers. Co-guardianship. Her name beside his. Ann's hands trembled. "Mr. Frederick, I can't. You're already their mother. This makes it official." She signed with tears streaming. Mama Ruth moved into the guest wing 2 days later. Full medical care. A room overlooking the garden. "Baby," she said, squeezing Ann's hand. "God had a plan all along." The boys recovered fully within 8 weeks. Vitamin supplements. Sunlight. Whole foods. Love. Every night at 8, and read to them in the sunroom. For boys curled around her. Bible stories. Hymns. Prayers. And every night, Arthur stood in the doorway watching. One night, she noticed, "Would you like to join us?" Arthur's throat worked. "I don't know how." "How to what?" "Pray." "I never learned." And smiled gently. "Kneel beside me." Arthur Frederick, billionaire, executive, empire builder, knelt beside the woman who'd been his housekeeper. "Just talk to him like he's right here." Arthur closed his eyes. Arthur's tears, no longer silent, no longer proud, fell freely. "Thank you for sending her, for saving them, for showing me what I couldn't see." The boys reached for him. Donald touched his face. Charles took his hand. Joseph and John leaned against his shoulders. For the first time in 4 years, Arthur held all his sons at once and read Psalm 23, the same psalm from that first night in Donald's room. Light streamed through windows. 5 people together in a room that had been empty so long. Not a billionaire and his staff. A family. Arthur looked at Ann. "You saw them. I looked at them every day and never saw them. Thank you for teaching me how." And smiled. "Love isn't complicated, Mr. Frederick. It's just showing up. Every single day." The boys fell asleep one by one. Safe. Healthy. Whole. And in that sunroom, with light pouring in like grace itself, something broken was finally restored. If this story touched your heart, this channel needs you. We're a family here, and our mission is to reach people who need hope. Join our family by subscribing now. Your support means everything. God bless you.